Hi, everybody. We're going to start to do our soup of the month transmissions, which we'll see how many we do. But basically, it's information that we get from some of our friends who are psychics, from our students, and it helps us to see the themes as they unfold. And this often works very well if you know the astrology of a month, but also it's how it actually unfolds. So I know that people are really feeling some very intense energies at the moment. And I think they really started to activate around the 17th or the 18th of January with the Venus Saturn conjunction. But there are so many other things lining up this year. And something I want to speak to is the oncoming Mayan New Year, which begins in February and is going to be mentioned in the slide that we're going to talk about with the non-dual astrology. And just so that you know, these are just excerpts from the forecast that I did a while back because we're just very, very busy holding space right now. So what's happening is we're coming into a year of 13 Ik. And 13 is like a cosmic number. It connects through to the spirit world, to the ancestors world, and Ik is about our communication. So we're coming into a deep dialoguing with the ancestral realm, with the spirit world. And what we're looking at and seeing is that a lot of, especially young people, are starting to sometimes channel through information, and it's happening, of course, unconsciously for a lot of them. But some of this has actually been shards of what we might call legacy burdens, inherited traits or behaviors that haven't been processed along the family line. And so some mums are experiencing changes with how their children are behaving. And sometimes this is lashing out at the parents. And I just really want to say to you, this is probably a manifestation of what we're about to come into, because the veil is thinning around spiritual communication. There's also been a lot of people experiencing what we might call interference. And actually, at the end of the month, we are going to start to run our entities course, where we're going to really deconstruct and bring into the heart space and into the non-dual space this whole concept of what entities and interference are, and to actually work people through what we might call the dimensions, the chakras, or just our conceptuality, to have a really robust way of understanding that and working with that. So it's interesting because it's all kind of up, and a lot of people are feeling it's very hard to see the bigger picture right now, and that's okay. We're processing a tremendous amount of karmic material right now. And that means that sometimes you just feel like you can't function. And the best thing to do is not even try to think what it is, and just to let that rise through, because the beauty is that it's karma rightening, okay? And the beauty is that everything is impermanent, okay? So know that that too shall pass. And this is going to be part of this lining up of what we're calling this new Venusian priestesshood, which we see in a lot of people's charts, and which is what we've been journeying with recently. And if you want, we've got the transmissions about these teachings and these very deep insights that align with Kala Chakra astrology. It's like a flip switch in time. And while we were working with that, it was very intense on those particular days of the conjunction in January, and the 17th and 18th of January. And some psychics got in touch with us from across the planet and basically mirrored things that we were feeling at that time. And then basically mirrored to us that what we've been reading in the timelines is indeed possible. Okay. So I don't want to give it all away, because if you didn't come here to listen to that, there's no point in explaining it. But that's there. It's going to be a big theme of the coming times, is really us working beyond being contracted by our karma and stuck, and very much in poor me, because we don't know where else to go and we can't even get out of I, and just creating space for deeper devotion and deeper service. And this is not going to be a done deal this year in the early parts of the year, but people who are doing the work right now are realizing that things are expanding because they're doing the right yoga practices or the right pranayama. But the whole year is really lining up to do a lot of this. And this veil thinning that's coming, which is going to bring I believe a lot around what's coming, especially with Saturn Rahu conjunction, is we're going to have a lot around the theme of inequality coming up and transformation, probably a lot of rebellion as well. But also, what's been happening is on a spiritual level, there have been ancient beings coming to myself and other people. And we realized that the act of decolonization is not just about refugees or the legacy of 3D colonization, but is also about the sacred natural order that exists around us. And the fact that many of us are living in a very material world, and we forget that there have been ancient beings and fairies or whatever elementals who have resided in ecosystems from before humans did. And there's something of a need for people to start to really realize that this is the year where we really have to examine the sacred order. And the sacred order is not just about what political party is in charge, it's actually about all ecosystems and understanding that there's a way of discussing and being a diplomat across the realms. And it's interesting because we've had to do some work about that, and it came through really strongly. So, this concept of being able to speak beyond the realms, this is something that Indigenous people have always been able to do. You have the whisperers, the land whisperers, the people who can speak Creoles, who to the waters, to the stones, to whatever. And for many people, it can be that a barrage of the languaging of the spirit world, however that might be for an individual, is starting to come online. And this means that you can feel a lot more spiritual energy, intense energy, almost under attack, these sorts of things, because it's actually wanting your attention in some way. And we usually freeze up or feel fear. So this is one of the reasons we felt to run this entities course at this time. But yeah, there's a lot coming through, and I can see how it's going to be a very interesting year in terms of spiritual communication, and especially where we're going to have Saturn in Pisces, Rahu going into Aquarius. There's a lot around how we deal with our spirituality, how we communicate with all beings. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to give this extra little context because I know some people are really struggling with the energies, and just really know that this energy is us moving through something very big. We are changing. We're changing rapidly, and that's going to keep going this year, especially for the first half of the year. So nothing is going to be that certain, but if you just honor and acknowledge what needs to come through, and also to understand that young people are even more sensitive to this energy. And so if there's stuff projecting at you, some of this is shards of unprocessed material from their karmic line or from your ancestral line that they're even more sensitive to pick up on. And this is coming forth because it actually wants to be resolved. It wants to be processed, okay? And if you need some help with that, this is the work we do. We help to process the shards, the terror, the addictions, the trauma. We let that come through. Okay, we let these sounds, these images, all these things that are stuck. That keep what we keep us stuck and we keep our ancestral line stuck. This is what we work with. Okay, so I hope you enjoy our shorter transmission that's just got some key insights from the different systems. And happy February, everybody. Over and out. Okay, so good news is from the 4th, Jupiter's going direct. So both Jupiter and Mars have a fiery energy. They're not necessarily both attributed to fire as an element, but both of them have a kind of divine spark energy. And Jupiter, in some forms of astrology, Jupiter is seen as our dharma, okay, when we're on our higher spiritual path, rather than just being riddled with karma and not really in tune with our higher purpose. So you can see this kind of trickle down effect. Mars is retrograding into Purnavasu, which is a little bit kinder. It's going to give us a little bit more light than we've had. Of course, just remember that everything, seeds are sown and grown in the dark, okay? They sit and, gestating. And then Jupiter, which really is about us being more unencumbered and expansive, Jupiter is now going direct. And this is its final fling with Taurus, where it's been since around May last year. And then Jupiter's going to go into Gemini in May this year. So we're going to have this forward motion. February is going to start to feel like, okay, I started to have some self reflexivity. I started to get a little bit about what I need to be doing. And then this gentle expansion is going to start again. We still won't have that vital life force energy and that spark of Mars, but these are all these cosmic mechanisms that are helping people to not jump the gun, because this is the problem with the society that we live in. The minute someone gets a download, they've got a YouTube channel about it, okay? And the universe is really saying to us, please don't do that right now. We're going to keep holding you back, because so right now, even though Mars is retrograding into Purna-Vasu, it's still in Cancer, it's still thirsty, which means it sometimes will have a burst of knowing things, and then it will be like, whoa, that's just evaporated. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So Mars is still sitting there in Gemini, even though it's in a slightly kinder nakshatra. And yeah, if you're one of those people who has a download and then suddenly is proclaiming everything on Facebook and social media because you've done it once, I would really, really caution against doing that, because you're just creating lots of extra projection energy. You're trying to proclaim yourself something before it's finished, okay? And to just be grateful that there is a bit more expansive nature, and it may help you to complete some things that you've had accumulating around you over the new year period, and it'll give you more optimism and hope for sure. And this energy also is augmented in the fact that we come into the Mayan New Year on the 18th of the month. And this is going to be a big year for deeper communication of a spiritual nature, okay? Big transformation. It is like a wind that blows through things. And number 13 is the connection to the ancestors, the connection to the other realms, the spirit world. So the expansion is really to help you to expand your spiritual communication. And this is one of the reasons we'll be launching things like our quantum transfiguration next batch of teachings around that time, because it's not just about putting it on social media. It's about understanding sacred vessel. And many people may find that they have a fine-tuned awareness of for some people be the astral, or some people be the ancestors or the dead or whatever. And the winds of change are coming, and they're coming on a multidimensional level as well, because it's going to be this energy within the year Lord for this year until February next year. Okay. So if in doubt, try to communicate through the ethers. Again, this is all what we don't do, is communicate in a spiritual way first before you try to do it in a material way to get likes. There was a wonderful transmission, which many of you may have seen, by Joe Dispenza that went out recently. And he's talking about women who live on their own. And I'm sure this can go across the board to people. But he basically says that women who live on their own are more magnetic. And what happens is that when people are living on their own, they're no longer seeking validation from people all the time. They learn to just realize that, okay, no, I don't have to be the belle of the ball to feel like I'm okay where I'm at. And he said that these are the people who are actually going to help to change the collective energetics, because when a person becomes truly magnetic rather than seeking validation all the time, this can actually help us to create a collective shift, okay? And so this is why if you sit in being magnetic, communicating on a more spiritual level, rather than always wanting likes and everybody to stroke you and all these little stories that are all called what we call energy harvesting, you will probably find that actually you will magnetize the right people to you, the right shifts, the right upgrades, okay? So there's quite a lot happening this year in terms of communication, and I really do hope that you can all, learn to to find your own magnetism, to not seek this seek strokes, seek likes, all of those things. I mean, that's what kids do, isn't it? And I just want to give gratitude to Ish Cacao, who is escorting me on my way today. Okay. So looking at the wave spells and the Trisenas, there's still a form of purging, purification, working with the unconscious that's going on when we have moon wave spell that's sitting with us this month. And a lot of people can find that they go into quite deep processes in the moon. It's quite sensitive, okay? And this whole retrograde energy of feeling a little bit like our wings are clipped, again, there's still process around. What's wonderful, again, is that after the moon, we come into wind wave spell. And this is totally mirroring what's happening with the new year lord in the traditional Mayan calendar. So we've got wind and ik, they are pretty much the same thing. So I do feel that there will be, in the middle of the month, more communication happening. And this all relates back to something I was saying about January, where a lot of people are feeling they can't quite verbalize the soup they're in. It's in a process, and the best thing to do is not to over verbalize, okay? And just if you also know that this concept of speech and communication is going to arise in middle of February, this will all be good. And then that's actually giving rise to the eagle wave swell. We're going to start to see the bigger picture after. So it's almost like Jupiter and the Mayan New Year energy. These are all starting to help us to feel like, okay, I'm not just contracted and blobby anymore. I'm starting to understand. And within that, there's also something about understanding for the collective. The eagle is altruistic for others. It's not just out for itself. So they're starting to see a bigger picture. And it's almost like we get a glimpse, something that switches on. And again, we're still in this kind of dreaming energy, because we then come into Akabal Trisena at the end of the month as well, which is about the liminal realms, about the dreaming. It's dusk. It's neither day nor night. And so we're going to go from, we have this opening early January where we have this dreaming possibility, and then late February it's another dreaming possibility. This is why some of the dreaming pods that we're doing, we're starting with like the grandmothers, then we're working with different social groups, so that it's tailored to the timeline, so that we can then help to really create valid community weaving and dreaming in a larger capacity. So if you feel that you want to be a sacred weaver, dreamer in this time, please do get in touch, because some of these sessions will be more for community activists, sacred activists, things like that. Okay, so we also, the end of the month, 24th, Rahu, this is our forward motion karma, greedy, insatiable, slightly delusional, well, very delusional Rahu is entering into Purva Bhadrapada. So it's going back from Uttar Bhadrapada to Purva Bhadrapada. So again, here we go, good twin, naughty twin, and all of this kind of shadow spirituality. It could get quite mad out there, because Purva Bhadrapada has, this kind of slightly deceitful, mad propensities that it's got to work through. And that's kind of what Rahu is as well. So it's like double wonky. And now Saturn and Rahu are both there. They're not conjunct just yet, but they're both there. And then Venus is going to retrograde in there as well at some point. Venus is going retrograde, and Mars finally goes direct later in the month, on the 23rd or the 24th. Now, what's very interesting is, like, as Mars goes direct, Venus goes retrograde, okay? And this is this whole thing about really retrospecting on our trauma Venus, our shadow Venus, this whole energy being in Purva Bhadrapada. You see, it's just very big, this thematic this year. So really examining shadow spirituality and the quest and over emphasis on duality. These things are all going to be very up. And something that probably needs to be said is that Rahu is very hard to ignore, okay? And Rahu is going to teach us. So some people will see up front, okay, this is Rahu Purva Bhadrapadra, then we will see a lot of people because we've got all this speech coming up. There are going to be people who are going to be saying, like, I'm the Messiah, I'm a super shaman, oh yeah, like I'm a channel for the Pleiadians or whatever. And there's definitely more of an outlet for people to communicate than there was in January and December. Uh, but we're really being shown, like, Venus is like, come and look at this shadow. And if you can try to bear that in mind, it may mean you make less of a fool of yourself than some people may. Also, I would really caution against trying to follow other people that have just come out of nowhere and are making grand proclamations, because there's going to be quite a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing, snake oil spiritual people, young people who are very positive, very strong about what they are, but actually don't have anything behind it or the life experience. And so this is always a temptation when we're lost, to go and fragment our energy by going and following anything that looks sparkly. And this is actually going to be, I feel, one of the big teachings of 2025, is that people are going to, there's been a trend of people not honoring the people who charge less, who are more experienced, and wasting all their money on the sparkly stuff. And I think that there's still a little bit of that to go. And then people are going to be pretty broke and realize they didn't have much to show for it, but they have to look at that law of attraction. So there could be quite a lot of weird stuff going on. And just bear in mind, this is all a process. And again, what we need to do is not try to personalize what is a collective process around our evolution of our spiritual nature. So there will be some naivety, there will be people who are deceitful, who are not honorable, and we could just call it rookie mistakes, okay? Doesn't mean that people don't have to atone for their actions down the line, or that they won't have any karmic repercussions, but just know that there will be probably quite a lot of this crazy behavior out there, okay?